get underway. Okay. Yep, ready to go. Okay, well, good morning everyone, and particularly to those people who are tuning in live. We're coming to you live from Laidley in the Lockyer Valley today, and Laidley is one of the communities which has been impacted by this most severe weather event. And notwithstanding the blue skies, there's a significant number of people who have been impacted, not only here in Laidley but across southeast Queensland. So just wanted to provide a general update firstly around the weather situation. Of course, we'll continue to see conditions improve, but we do still have major flood warnings on a number of rivers and creek catchments. That's the Mary, Condamine, Ballon, Thompson and Cooper river and creek catchments. There will be communities, particularly those in the southern interior, who will continue to experience the impact of those major flood warnings, but they are very resilient communities and used to this. But the key thing for those communities is to continue to look at the information and prepare yourself for the possible impact of that major flooding. We do have a couple of people who are missing. So there was a gentleman who went missing in the Brisbane River yesterday, went in from South Bank, so we're obviously concerned and looking for that person. We also found a car on the road between Ballandine and Stanthorpe, so we're obviously looking for a person who may have been in that car. So if anyone's got any information about these people, please provide it to the authorities, and of course our emergency services and police will be very proactive about trying to locate those people. Right across the impacted area, we're continuing to engage with residents and businesses and communities, and our emergency services along with councils are engaged now in rapid damage assessments. So across the impacted area we've completed about 550 rapid damage assessments, and right here in the Laidley, Grantham, Lockyer Valley area we've actually completed 439 damage assessments. Now that does not mean that all of those properties have been impacted, and there'll be a degree of impact in those properties, but it gives us a bit of an idea about who has been impacted and what supports that they might need. Mount Crosby Water Treatment Plant is still running at a reduced capacity, and that is just because of the remediation works required from the flood impact. So we're still reminding residents of Brisbane, Ipswich and Logan to conserve water until that reduced operating capacity has been dealt with. And there are some releases from dams, including Wivenhoe and Somerset. We've had obviously an experience with locals here in Laidley, and can I start by really acknowledging the leadership of Mayor Tanya Milligan. Lives and breathes her community, is there during the response, is there during the recovery, and is obviously well connected with her community. So I wanted to particularly acknowledge her and her commitment to residents of this region. Obviously there have been a number of businesses and residents impacted in this region, and it breaks your heart to see that people are impacted to the extent that they are. And whilst you can always rebuild, it's the emotional toll that disasters like this have on people's lives. So I wanted to reinforce to everyone that the authorities, the councils, the state government, the federal government, we all work together here to support people in the recovery effort. So today in town we've had Major General Jake Ellwood, the State Reconstruction Coordinator. We've also got members of the Queensland Reconstruction Authority, members of the police and emergency services, the rural fire services here to help with washouts and cleanouts, and of course the council. We're all engaged to make sure people get their supports. But it is also important for people to recognise that there needs to be an emotional recovery and emotional support as well. So we've also got Lance here from Chaplain Watch, and there is important messages which he'll reinforce about people needing to reach out to one another, to check on them, to make sure that they're supported, but also for people who are impacted to reach out and just start with talking, because that goes a long way. The final thing I'll finish on before handing over to the Mayor and others to speak is just to reinforce our thanks to all of the people who contribute to response and recovery. particularly in this National Volunteers Week. So it's National Volunteers Week this week, and what we see not only every disaster, but generally every day of the week, volunteers stepping up and contributing significantly to their community. And right here in Laidley, and of course across southeast Queensland, we've seen over the last weekend state emergency service volunteers, putting others ahead of themselves and contributing to community. Rural fire service volunteers, helping with the clean out, supporting others, responding. And of course volunteers from community and non-government organisations who are there for the support. So a big shout out to all of our volunteers in National Volunteers Week. Thank you very much for what you do. We couldn't do it without you, to be honest. Your contribution is outstanding and we're very, very grateful. So I'll invite the Mayor to now say a few things. Thank you.
Okay, you can ask me questions.
So yeah, obviously second knock in a pretty short space of time.
Yeah, I guess the last few days have been very, at times, gut-wrenching, soul-destroying and quite emotional. And that is even as Chair of LDMG, seeing things play out in your community. But days like today, when, it's a really clear demonstration of great relationships and support that I feel we have as a council. We had the event in February, March, and Minister Ryan came out and visited my community then, again has reached out. My federal member was on the phone this morning, and even just local government colleagues and our agencies. I continually talk about, for us as a small council, the real importance of relationships and partnerships, that when things get hairy as they have been, that I know the person that I'm on the phone to, and I have faith and confidence with the people that I'm getting information from. So at times like this, that stuff's just exceptionally important, because I would hope that my confidence in my relationships and the information I have gives my community confidence in moving forward.
Do you have that same confidence in the resources that you need, given this is not the first flood this year?
Yeah, I think it would be fair for me to say, and I need to say it as Mayor, that we're a bit fatigued. We've come. It feels like we continually have all these events, but we had the drought. We, like every other community, experienced COVID. We had the February, March. We've got this event again. I need to acknowledge that we are a small council, so we're really conscious of managing fatigue. And whilst the waters is subsided, like as the Minister pointed out, I really believe that it's the emotional side of things and the build back and the clean up. I think that's the really tough stuff. It's the tough stuff because people's emotions are already heightened, and it's about managing people's expectations. But I will say, yesterday in town here, I see it time and time again, the amount of people that were in Laidley town just getting dirty and muddy, and just everyone was just digging deep and just helping each other. I think that in itself gives people some hope to hang on to.
I think that people seem to have real resilience, like they're getting in there and they are just moving on with things. From a financial perspective though, do you have what you need to rebuild this community and to help these business people?
Yeah, we're certainly working hand in hand with the government, and I always say I have no shame in putting my hand up and asking for help. And legitimately when help is required and needed. So that is what we are doing, and we are really, leaning into those agencies, and I'm being quite vocal as far as what assistance we need, what assistance our community needs, because, I spoke to a gentleman from Grantham today, and you've got the impact still from the previous event, and he had said to me that about 90% of our farmers had their insurance claims rejected. You've got farmers that may have very well planted after the last event. We haven't had enough sunshine, so those crops are now going to rot in the ground. So there's so many layers of issues of emotions, of whether you're a homeowner, you're a business person, you're a farmer, you're a labourer, you know, you're a council, let alone our emergency service people and our volunteers, that most of them, they've been out there assisting us in our community and they've had their own homes and businesses impacted. So there's so many levels. So I guess for me, I really want to say out front now that I really ask our community for some patience in the coming weeks and months. It will be, I said it last time, it won't be a sprint, it will be a marathon, and I think we were still just wiping the sweat and still knocking the dry mud off our boots last time.
Does it annoy you that the insurance companies won't stand up and do their job? People pay good premiums, especially the farmers.
Absolutely, it is annoying. A lot of those farmers were hoping, depending on that, and I guess it just, you know, it all comes back down to how the event is categorised. So we will have farmers that have no intention to replant and have sent their labourers home and aren't even thinking about doing anything till 2023. You have people that have just lost absolutely everything. And they too will be wondering, you know, is it all worth it? So it's a huge concern of mine. And I don't know how quickly they will recover, and I don't know what that will mean for us as a state, as a nation, as far as, you know, average mum and dad and a couple of kids having to buy their produce from the supermarket. I think sometimes people forget about our farmers and they're real people too, just trying to make a living and raise a family.
And, you know, what's the financial impact? You're doing these assessments, you said they're already underway. If you were to put a dollar value on it, ballpark, what are we looking at?
I'll be really vague. Millions. I was talking about 20 million from February-March event. And, you know, it's really early days for us because we haven't even really got in and really had a look at what's happening. We've got 120 roads still closed. We still have some bridges closed. We still don't know, you know, the full scope of residences and homes because, unfortunately, I have a really proud community and most of them just always continually say to me, oh, there's someone worse than me. And they think they've got to go it alone, or they don't tell you that their home has been inundated until months later. So, yeah, I couldn't put a figure on it. And then if it's a figure about infrastructure, what figure do you put on, you know, social capital, on your community's health and well-being? Because as I've always said, if my community is happy and healthy and connected, we have a greater ability to bounce back after events and disasters, but we already feel pretty flogged at the moment. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. So it's been 2.5 months since I've taken on duties as the State Recovery Coordinator for the South East Queensland floods. Since the start of my time, obviously there's been 2 additional major flood events, which is significant. Today I'll be going through Lockyer Valley where the hardest hit areas are, and over the next couple of weeks I'll be revisiting places that have been hit yet again. And I've got to tell you, I think it would test the most stoic in us. And so, yeah, my heart goes out to everyone who's been affected yet again. Queensland Fire and Emergency Services and the Queensland Reconstruction Authority will do all their assessments now to understand the scale of the damage and also to where assistance must go, and that's really important to understand. Really, to me, I see there must be, it's sharpened my focus about recovery is very important, but so is making sure that we come out of this more resilient, and that's going to be really important, and that will be a big part of the plan that I'll be putting forward. I've noticed over the last couple of days, as I've spoken to residents in different areas who have been affected previously during the first floods, there's a real nervousness, a real anxiety about this last weather event. So even if someone wasn't inundated, there was a real sense of anxiety, and I really would recommend that if you are struggling, to reach out to the Community Recovery Hotline and they can provide support to you. Lastly, I would just like to applaud the amazing efforts of our Queensland Police, Queensland Fire and Emergency Services, community leaders who have bonded yet again in very trying conditions.
Can you say what your plan going forward, your resilience plan might look like at this point?
Look, there are a number of different areas that what I found is common threads through different areas. Now, obviously, there is urban areas, and then there are rural and regional areas, and so each is slightly different, but we're going to make sure that each of those areas is covered off.
Are
In
you
what
talking
way?
more about bouncing back from events like this, or are you talking about mitigation?
We're talking about things like mitigation. As you saw, I think, the first great step last week announced the expressions of interest for the Resilient Home program. I think that's a great thing, but it's making sure that we're making good decisions and making sure that we are well informed of the threats that we face.
Well, I understand, speaking with some of the business owners, that there was mitigation work done here, but the water came from another direction, so it didn't really help. So would you be looking at all directions of where water could come
Well, look,
from
I mean,
this area?
there's specific areas, but in terms of the broader state plan, there are a number of issues that we're going to have to look at very closely and have to make some hard decisions.
For instance, dams or...
Well, dams are one thing, but they're not the solution to everything, nor are levee walls. Sometimes it's where we're developing, how we're developing. We've got to make sure we're making right decisions there. But again, I think very important is making sure that communities are informed of the risk that they're facing.
Similar to the recent event, we're obviously talking a huge area where widespread from the Wide Bay, the North, got to now we've shifted to the southeast. Are you confident you've got the resources to be at all those places at once? Are you covered on the ground?
Well, Queensland Reconstruction Authority doing great work engaging with all the different councils and leaders. So too are all the state departments, and I know we have great federal support as well. So I think all the mechanisms are there. It's making sure that it's well coordinated.
Do you need a particular set of steps for that federal assistance, or that comes straight through in this sort of circumstances, or do you need a declaration when you receive federal support?
No, look, so there has been great support from the federal government and the state government to make sure that communities are being looked after and to make sure that, the recovery is moving forward. All right, thank you.
Good morning. Fire and Emergency Services has moved into the definitely in support of recovery and working with local governments and the community in terms of trying to get back to normality and through supporting washouts and other sort of activities to support community. Our RFS and SES volunteers have been out working tirelessly alongside community, and they're from the community, and often they're doing that at the and they're impacted themselves. The QFES's response at this stage is significantly across not just the Greater Lockyer Valley, but up into the Southern Downs and other parts across southeast Queensland. So what I would encourage, if people still need support in washouts or other types of activities, 132500 or the SES Assistance app. Please, if you do need that assistance, ask early so we can access you as soon as we can.
Just talk us through the spread of services that you're currently providing. Obviously, part of it is freshwater rescues that you've been undertaking, but also out west you've got a lot of isolated areas. Just dealing with that isolation.
Yeah, so across fire and emergency services, whether it's a fire and rescue service with the swift water response capabilities, SES with the floodboat operations, or indeed post this, just RFS out there washing out buildings and getting houses and businesses back into operation. Widespread, some of it's just connecting, doing damage assessments, informing other parts of government and what that damage is and where is the most area of need. However, it's that genuine connection of our volunteers and staff across those communities, being there along with them, knowing that they're affected, knowing that they know their neighbours and colleagues, but they're getting on with it. And I think the Minister mentioned earlier that it's National Volunteers Week, and it goes a long way in these events to the effort that our volunteers put forward to support community.
Do you feel that people are getting that message about if it's flooded, forget it, given the fewer rescues that were carried out this time around?
Yeah, look, any rescue that does need to be undertaken where people have driven or played in floodwater or whenever was one too many, So we certainly keep encouraging that message, keep talking about it. We want the community to talk about it. But we've seen it too often, even during this event. So we're still driving that message, and we want community. It does create frustration in emergency services. It doesn't just put the individuals or the people in the vehicle with them at risk. It puts emergency services at risk in responding to it. So certainly encourage people to have those conversations. If they're in a vehicle and the driver's going to drive through, challenge that driver around what they're doing and their behaviours.
We heard the Mayor talk about the fatigue of these events consecutively. Obviously that's a factor for your staff, volunteers who are often in these communities. Is there any need for backup at this stage, or are you confident with the staff that you've got working through?
Yeah, look, QFES is 40,000 odd people organisation, so it is a very large organisation, huge proportion of volunteers spread across the state. There is definitely fatigue. We've been going on various operations for, including COVID, for a long time now, and that all takes a toll. But people keep stepping up for their communities. That's what they're engaged for. That's why they want to provide a service to their communities. So we're very conscious of that fatigue and how to look after them and support them in doing that. But they keep putting their hand up and doing the right thing by community. Thank you.
Good morning, Jimmy Scott, Queensland Reconstruction Authority. So this is a devastating time for many Queensland communities who are recovering from yet another flood event. The Queensland Reconstruction Authority, over the recent days and over the weekend, has been working very closely with councils to monitor the situation and understand the support requirements that are needed to support the community. To date, following this most recent SEQ flood event, 12 local governments have been activated for counter-disaster operations under the joint Commonwealth State Disaster Recovery Funding Arrangements. Most importantly, that includes the activation of personal hardship assistance to residents in the Lockyer Valley, Southern Downs and selected areas of Moreton Bay Regional Council. That provides assistance of up to $180 for an individual and up to $900 for a family to support those immediate recovery needs such as food, temporary accommodation, clothing, medication. So we're here in Laidley today to listen to the community, meet with council to understand those recovery needs in terms of what further assistance may be required. QRA will continue to work with council and monitor the situation and work very closely with the Commonwealth to activate any further assistance. And again, just following on from what was spoken earlier, if any residents need help or are unable to access it, I'd very much encourage them to contact the Community Recovery Hotline. So that number is 1800 173 349.
How would you describe the recovery effort that you've seen here, just talking with business owners and locals today?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of work happen today, and I very much commend the work of Lockyer Valley Regional Council and Queensland Police Service and Queensland Fire and Emergency Services in the work to date. There's been work happen already in terms of clean-up and washouts, but again, listening to the community, there's still further work required in that regard. Well, I think there's still further clean-up and washout work necessary. There's also, from this type of event, going to very likely be damage to essential public infrastructure, roads and bridge network. And again, we'll work very closely with councils and also the Department of Transport and Main Roads to understand those impacts and then to support the recovery of those into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and my name is Lance Murgard, Community Crisis Chaplain. I've heard a lot this morning with regard to resilience, and much of it has been related to the physical that is happening around the place, that people are finding strength to be able to do the mud out and mop out of their shops and their houses. I'm now becoming concerned with regard to the fact that this community has had initially a major flood event in April. Now, after that, they had started to build new hope for the future, only for that hope to now be dashed. That's a double jeopardy, and I'm really now becoming quite concerned. I'm talking to people who are saying they're okay on the street, but I just watch their hands and they start to shimmer. I watch the bottom lip start to quiver. And we need to now start to invest a lot into people so that they do not become damaged further than what they are now because of this. So our response will be to be in the community, to be respond to people, to be able to care for them, to be part of the Community Recovery Centre, and to be able to work through with the state government to be able to pull that together in that regard. So we're here to help people make a difference in their lives. Thank you.
Minister, the opposition again today calling this handsome and we haven't seen enough of that health data that they've been proving.
Yeah. Look, I'm advised that the data's quite complex, and every year it takes time to finalise that data. But I've got advice that the health minister's provided a rock solid assurance that as soon as the data's finalised, it'll be released. That's it. Thanks, everyone. All the best.